power, Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Good morning. Thank you for your company. Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
And this is quite Kremlin-esque, isn't it? To dig into the backgrounds of UK journalists.
No, I mean,
it's quite aren't you disturbed by this, Mr. Downey?
That's absolute nonsense, Camille.
Well, it's all kicking off because breaking tonight, the Conservative Party has demanded Sir Keir Starmer, our dear leader, investigates the so-called creepy spy scandal where allies of the PM hired lobbyists to investigate and smear British journalists. Russia, North Korea, China? No, this is the UK in 2026. It's fresh pressure tonight on Sir Keir Starmer. Meanwhile...
You are Jew hunting. You are Jew hunting.
I'll speak to the woman in that video who confronted what she calls people going door-to-door Jew hunting. So those people were pro-Palestine campaigners knocking on people's doors, asking if they'd boycott Israel and, crucially, making notes of people who said they wouldn't. It's a shocking story you don't want to miss. Plus...
We need to call it for what it is. There is a legitimate reason to have a debate about things like migration.
Oh, well, surprise, surprise, even Hillary Clinton now is a deplorable because she wants a conversation on immigration, finally. Has the Overton window shifted? Also tonight.
The democracy of Great Britain is under serious threat, and people, just because they post opinions on social media, are arrested and they're attacked. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, should especially take certain steps on this topic and not make any compromises so that he can protect or please this part of the community.
Well, that was back in June, but now the man convicted of burning a Quran in London is set to be granted asylum in America under President Trump's administration as a refugee if he loses a landmark court case this week. How embarrassing for Britain. Also tonight... I love it. That, of course, was the iconic moment from ET, but it might be real, according to former US President Barack Obama, who says aliens exist. What do you think? GBNews.com/your say. I'm Ben Leo, and this is The Late Show Live. Hello, good morning to you. Welcome along to The Late Show Live in Washington, D.C. My panel with me tonight is US political reporter for the Daily Mail, Victoria Churchill, and Simon Hankinson, immigration and border expert. And in London is GBNews contributor and comedian, superstar, Paul Cox. Hello, Paul. Give us a wave. Thank you very much. We'll join you in just a tick, Paul. Thank you. Right, let's crack on to our main news this evening. And actually, it's a big breaking story because Sir Keir Starmer's barely clinging on to his job already, but his government has tonight been plunged into yet another scandal, this time involving a prominent Labour think tank that paid £36,000 to investigate British journalists and smear them as being pro-Russian. The Prime Minister is under pressure to investigate whether there are links between his government and Labour Together, a think tank that spent thousands of pounds smearing Sunday Times and Guardian journalists who were reporting on their funding. So Labour Together is said to have hired PR firm APCO Worldwide to target British journalists who reported on the think tank's failure to declare more than £70,000 in donations. At the time, Labour Together was run by Josh Simons, who is now the Labour MP for Makerfield and a Cabinet Office Minister. And before Simons, it was run by Starmer's former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who, of course, recently resigned over the Mandelson affair. When it was run by Simons, Labour Together reportedly hired public relations company APCO, based in Washington, D.C., conveniently, to examine the personal, political and religious backgrounds and motivations of British journalists, probing their finances with a view of discrediting their work. That's according to the Sunday Times. Gabriel Pogrund, who is the Sunday Times Whitehall editor, and Harry York, the newspaper's deputy political editor, were named as, quote, persons of significant interest in a 58-page dossier. In the dossier, there were nearly 10 pages of deeply personal and false claims about Mr. Pogrund, linking him to Russian sabotage campaigns and commenting on his status as a Jew and even making claims on his personal relationships. Very murky, very grubby stuff. Tonight, the Conservative Party has written to Labour Party Chair Anna Turley, urging her to investigate Mr Simons' role in the decision to hire APCO. And even Clive Lewis, the Labour MP for Norwich South, has said Labour and the Prime Minister should now commit to full cooperation with an independent inquiry to establish the facts. Lewis says what was commissioned, who authorised it, and who knew about it and how far it went. Reform's Nadhim Zahawi, of course the former Tory minister, has told The Telegraph today, this is a huge story. We need to know who knew about this inside Labour. Did the PM know? And SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn said the Prime Minister should sack Josh Simons as a minister as he is, quote, at the centre of this creepy spy scandal. So, for me, viewers and listeners, Sir Keir Starmer has big questions to answer tonight. What does he know about Labour Together and the 36 grand they spent investigating legitimate British journalists? Does he condemn such torrid authoritarian behaviour? And what's he going to do about the likes of Cabinet Office Minister Josh Simons, who was head of Labour Together when it allegedly embarked on the investigation and the smear campaign against Sunday Times reporters? Day after day, it becomes ever clearer that this Labour government and its friends and allies have, I argue, a pretty nasty authoritarian streak that communists from the CCP would be very proud of indeed. Jailing people for tweets, suppressing free speech, spying on journalists, cancelling elections and dreams of scrapping jury trials. They have no problems whatsoever throwing the term fascist around, but let's be honest, Labour campaigners and politicians seem to behave like the most fascist monsters of all. And the irony, it seems, isn't lost on them. GBNews.com/your say. Let me know your thoughts about this story tonight. As I said, huge pressure on Sir Keir Starmer and the government to answer those key questions. With me now to discuss this is journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. Michael, good morning. Thanks for staying up with us on the Late Show Live. As a long-standing veteran journalist, what do you make of this? Are you concerned about the attack on the free press, or is it much to do about nothing?
No, I am very concerned. I mean, Gabriel Pogrund is probably the best journalist in Britain right now. He's always winning awards. He's always breaking stories, full of scoops. Fantastic record. I mean, I can sort of understand Labour Together being a bit perturbed when he exposed them for not declaring their donations to the Electoral Commission. I can understand them being perturbed. But to spend £36,000 on an outside lobbying group to conduct an inquiry, which produces a 58-page report, much of which is just false allegations and smears against Gabriel Pogrund and Harry York, is just outrageous. And one wonders whether Labour Together also did investigations into other journalists. I mean, if they did it with Gabriel, it's quite likely. We need to know that. And frankly, Keir Starmer, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, should announce that he wants Labour Together to close down. He should haul in Josh Simons and get a full account of how he was involved in this and what else happened. And he should be asking Lisa Nandy and Steve Reed, both of them members of his cabinet, who were directors of Labour Together, what they knew about this. Did they sanction the £36,000 payment for this report? Did they know anything about it? Did they read it? Did they disseminate it? I mean, part of the allegation here is that senior figures within the Labour Party were supplied with this report in order to discredit the two Sunday Times journalists. And there will be a lot of people in the Labour Party who will not only be shocked about what they've heard here, but they'll be wondering about this pressure group that had £36,000 to spend on a report like this. They'll be saying, well, you should have spent that money on something better, like, members of staff. And that apply. I mean, what's extraordinary about Labour Together is it doesn't seem to have been short of money. And indeed, the Electoral Commission fined it for not declaring £273,000, I think it was, some years ago. And indeed, that is what Gabriel Pogrund was reporting on in the first place.
Well, Michael, at the very least, I mean, so Simons tonight has said that APCO, this PR company who is based here in DC, he's accused them of straying beyond its brief. He said he was surprised and shocked to read the report extended to the detail it's extended to. But for me, there seems to be a theme, and maybe you'll disagree, Michael, that amongst this government at the moment, and the ministers, Sir Keir Starmer, there's always somebody else to blame. So, it's McSweeney's fault. Oh, it's Mandelson's fault for not informing me. Oh, it's the PR company's fault for going beyond its brief. Do you think at the very least Simons should be relieved of his duty as a cabinet minister?
No, I wouldn't go that far yet. I think Starmer should haul him in and get a proper account of what happened, and it should be a proper grilling. It shouldn't be like they did with Peter Mandelson. It should be asking tough questions, and if he doesn't answer them properly or adequately, yeah, he should lose his job. But you should give the guy a chance. And I mean, it's really embarrassing for Starmer, because basically Labour Together were the Keir Starmer supporters organisation. It was Labour Together under more.
Oh, you still there, Michael? I think we've lost Michael. If you can hear us, Michael, thank you very much for joining us tonight. That's journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. Adam Rose is down the line now, the Deputy Director of Advocacy at Freedom of the Press Foundation. Adam, for me as a journalist, this reminds me back in the day, 15 years ago, when police forces in the UK were using the RIPA Act, the Regulatory Investigatory Powers Act, to but go to phone companies and demand the numbers of their sources for stories. Again, there seems to be a real disdain for the idea of the free press here. What's your take, please, as a leading journalist and defender of the free press?
I think you're raising some very important questions right now, and I'd like to add three more that I hope will frame this conversation, help the audience out there to think about this, as well as conservatives, as well as Labour, because I think that all of us should be interested in how power and authority is used. The first question is whether any government resources or power actually was used in this situation. Now, in the United States, we might look at this as something that's more a question of think tanks, political action committees, and that sort of thing. But if it's an actual government entity that acted on any of this, then that raises enormous concerns. Secondly, it's very important to understand how the information was obtained. Some of this sounds very personal and intimate. It's not okay to violate anyone's privacy, whether they're a journalist or anyone else. And for journalists out there, it's a good reminder about the measures that they should take to protect their privacy. Ultimately, at this stage, which is very early, I want to flag that, there's no indication yet that the PR company involved did anything that a journalist wouldn't do, right? Asking questions, doing research. It's kind of a form of opposition research. That that in and of itself wouldn't be the problem. It could very easily, however, cross very serious lines in terms of ethics and potentially even legally. We don't know all of that yet, but again, that's the second thing I would want to know is how was that information obtained? And then the final thing is, what of that information that was released was factual versus defamation or false information and harassment? And this may be a greater operative concern, but when you think about any of these three questions, the government, how it was obtained, and how or whether a journalist was defamed or harassed, these are things that chill a journalist's ability to do their job. It intimidates them and it scares them at times because it's not just them, it's also their family, it's also their loved ones. And so it's very important that we ensure that those questions are answered by whatever the appropriate authority is. Ideally, often it's the media that does that to hold power to account. So those are the things that really leap to mind and worry me when I hear about this.
Adam, thank you so much. You make some great points about how they obtained the data to compile that 58-page dossier. I mean, I agree with you. It is an important point. But for me, the very fact that Labour Together wanted to compile this dossier in the first place just because journalists did a legitimate story, which turned out to be true, on their finances is pretty chilling. And Keir Starmer tonight has some serious questions to answer. I won't bother saying that it could bring him down because nothing seems to bring our Prime Minister down these days. He could do the most heinous thing and he'd still be in the job. Adam, thank you very much. That's Adam Rose, Deputy Director of Advocacy at Freedom of the Press Foundation. Alison Phillips, who is now head of Labour Together, said the group was ready to support the PRCA and other relevant governance bodies with its review of the issue. APCO, the PR company who are based here in DC, didn't respond to requests for comment. Maybe I'll go and see them tomorrow. And Josh Simons, now the Labour MP for Makerfield in Greater Manchester, said APCO had strayed beyond its brief. He said, "I was surprised and shocked to read the reports extended beyond the contracts by including unnecessary information on Gabriel Pogrund. I asked for this information to be removed before passing the report to GCHQ." It went to GCHQ. I mean, no other British journalist, says Simons, were investigated in any document I or Labour Together ever received. He said he welcomed the investigation launched last week by the Public Relations and Communications Association. So, yeah, there we go. Keir Starmer has big questions to answer. My panel are here with me now. Victoria Churchill, Simon Hankinson and Paul Cox is down the line as well. Am I the only person who thinks this is pretty chilling, Simon?
No, I mean, we think it's pretty chilling too. And I noticed that Morgan McSweeney was also founder of the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which President Trump just put sanctions on, visa sanctions on. Imran Ahmed, I think his name is.
Yes.
Is a Brit who lives here. So yeah, the British government trying to control the free speech of Americans is something that worries me, and it worries people in Britain.
And McSweeney was head of Labour Together before Simons. So McSweeney really involved in the nitty-gritty of not just Labour Together, but the government as well. And that's where a lot of these questions come. Victoria, as an American listening to this, actually, can I show you the front page of the Telegraph, Victoria? What do you make of the state of Britain when you hear things like this?
I mean, we've talked about it week after week on this show, pretty much as long as I've been coming on, that our understanding of free speech, how we have it in the U.S., does not exist in the UK. You know, I remember, I believe it was Lucy Connolly, of course, the mother that actually, you know, was put in jail, right? And she wanted to travel to the U.S. and Starmer's government wouldn't even let her come to the U.S. because they were afraid of what she would say about his government. So, you know, that's quite clearly, at least in my view, chilling of speech by the UK government. Now, you know, as an American, this makes my skin crawl, right? In America, we have not only the First Amendment, but also the Fourth Amendment against warrantless search and seizure by the government. Now, you know, again, the degree, right, like if this was a case that was being litigated in U.S. court, I think there'd be the big question of how involved was the government in this tracking.
Look at the front page of the Telegraph tomorrow in the UK, Victoria. So the main lead is Trump to give Quran burner refuge in the UK. Democracy denied to 15 million voters if elections in the UK are cancelled again. Starmer under fire for journalist smears. Under 16s to be banned from social media. I mean, it seems to me, I'm a little bit embarrassed as a Brit about the state of our country at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, to me as an American, I'm seeing, you know, glaring First Amendment, particularly information war violations in pretty much every single story on that front page. Now, but, you know, again, we have to talk about the fact that, of course, the UK is not the US. And, you know, we recall last year, J.D. Vance went over to the UK and basically told them that J.D. Vance said that, you know, the UK should be more like the US if we want to keep having diplomatic and economic relationships, that, you know, we should have, even though the First Amendment doesn't exist in the UK, that there should be kind of First Amendment-like protections.
We gave you and the world free speech. We gave you... It's just insane, Paul Cox, how we've descended to this point. And look, maybe Labour Together had nothing to do with it. Maybe the PR company did go beyond their brief. Maybe Keir Starmer will get away with it again and say, I knew nothing of this. I didn't know about Morgan McSweeney, Simons getting involved in this when I hired him as a cabinet minister. Maybe he'll just avoid it again. But it's just another example, Paul, of just the grubby nature, I argue, of not the government particularly, but Labour types.
Yeah, my opinion is they did know. And they would have been very happy for this to continue in the way it did. We need a free press. We need a free press because we lack free speech. So if we've got journalists who are afraid to talk and we've got citizens that are afraid to talk, then power goes unheld to account. So I agree with Victoria on this. Because I agree with Victoria. Victoria's got great judgment. She married an Englishman. She knows exactly what she's talking about. And I just think, look, this is, you've already said this, but this is just another scandal that piles on top. What's unfortunately happening is that we've become almost immune to these scandals now. Everything that keeps coming up should be the sort of thing we see maybe once or twice a year as a political scandal, not once or twice a week.
Down leaders and politicians.
It's incredible. And McSweeney,
Paul Cox, You know, it's week after week, it's month after month, and you know, to compare it right to partially tied Mandelson Epstein files, like I cover the Epstein files, I feel like day in and day out. So as disgusting as the new information that comes out week after week, you do kind of become immune to it. You do kind of draw like an armor almost to it. You're like, oh well, you know, that's another scandal with Starmer. That's another scandal with Epstein.
Yeah.
But we got to keep talking about it as journalists.
Well, as Michael Crick just said then, it was a good chat with Michael Crick. He said first thing tomorrow morning, Keir Starmer should be hauling Simons into the Cabinet office, asking him what the hell we knew about it. Oh, Michael's still here. Michael, we lost you for a second there. Thank you for hanging on. Well, just repeating what you told me a little bit earlier. Yeah, go on.
I was going to add that, I mean, your American contributors really have a cheek attacking Britain over freedom of speech. The decline of freedom of speech in the United States has been greater under Don Trump, as I call him, than any other president. I mean, you mentioned Imran Ahmad.
Can you give an example?
Yes, Imran Ahmad, mentioned to you by one of the contributors. The administration is trying to take away his American visa, even though he is married to an American wife, simply because of him running the campaign for digital hate. We've seen the way in which the administration has taken money away from universities because of student protests. We've seen the way in which Donald Trump in the White House garden threatened the bureau chief of ABC, the American broadcaster, because the bureau chief tried to ask Trump about his misuse of his office for personal enrichment. There's been a huge curtailment of freedom of speech to the extent that British people I know, or British people living in America, are frightened to say what they think about the Trump administration, and people here are frightened to go to America. So don't you lecture us about freedom of speech. The freedom of speech under Trump has been an absolute disgrace. Absolute disgrace. You should be deeply ashamed of him. Yeah.
Okay. I'll let Simon come back to you on that. Let's say, for argument's sake, you are correct. How do you think the UK freedom of speech compares to the US with that in mind currently?
It's far better. There have been problems, but nothing like there have been under Trump. Trump has been the most illiberal president, the most corrupt president that the United States has ever known. He's torn the American Constitution up. The First Amendment might as well not be there.
Simon, do you want to come back at my comment? There's lots of points there.
Yeah, I mean, I have a name. That's Simon. I'm a contributor. Look, you have blasphemy laws in Britain right now. If somebody burns a Bible, which they should not do, or burn a Quran, which they should not do because it's rude and bad practice, but they can do that. It's not illegal. But you have this guy who's now seriously looking at leaving Britain to get refuge here in the United States because his life will be in danger. You've had a teacher beheaded in France. You've had people attacked. You've had people stabbed. You have non-crime hate incidents. I really don't think you can compare those two things. And look, when it comes to Imran Ahmed, we have the right to determine who comes to our country.
What about your universities that have had their funding taken away because of student
We don't
protest?
have to write a blank check to every university in this country so they can set up, you know, Palestinian anti-Israeli program studies or gender studies programs.
Academic freedom should mean the freedom to protest.
Yeah, academic freedom, exactly. And they can spend their $50 billion endowment on that freedom and not my tax dollars.
He's the most authoritarian president you've ever had.
And if Britain wants to keep people in the country who hate Britain, that's up to them. Like this Albanian career criminal that you've had for a year on public benefits that you can't get rid of. And the Syrian guy who committed a sex offense in Germany that you've had for a year on public benefits you can't get rid of. We can get rid of people who don't like our country, like Imran Ahmed, if we want to. That is the power that...
And Trump pardons goodness knows how many criminals. I mean, what isn't that freedom of speech?
Michael, just on your point about the universities. I mean, they've taken away visas, student visas, from people who go around university campuses saying "death to America" and "death to Jews." If you had somebody in your house, Michael, tonight saying "death to Michael Crick," I mean, you'd kick him out, wouldn't you?
If they say death to Jews, that would be a fair reason. But a lot of these protests are not saying death to Jews. They're simply legitimate protests about what Israel has been doing in Gaza. And the chilling effect that that's had on universities in the United States is appalling. I mean, we are meant to be liberals, all of us, meant to believe in academic freedom. Trump doesn't believe in academic freedom. Look at the way he treated the ABC bureau chief. It's on video. Look at the way he cheated the ABC bureau chief and threatened to report him to the Australian Prime Minister for asking questions about the way in which Trump has corruptly enriched himself as president. Those are the questions you should be asking. Your contributors should be asking. Sat there
patiently.
Sorry, Ben, were you asking me a question now?
Go on.
Yeah. Interestingly, I took a quick look at your say, which is our forum for our viewers. Good evening, everybody. And just before, when we lost Michael, everyone was saying it was wonderful to see how calm Michael was. And ever since you come back, Michael, you've been in full Michael Crick mode. So I don't know if you went to charge your batteries or what happened, but. Look, look, we're all in glass houses here, whether we're in the States or we're in the UK. And I don't think that it's to do with Donald Trump in the same way it's not entirely to do with Keir Starmer. You can make the arguments on both sides. What it's about is a degradation of cultures on both sides of the Atlantic that allow free speech. We've put everyone in silos and said, you're this because you're this skin colour, you're that because you support this. Instead of encouraging tolerance, we're always encouraging intolerance. I think we should have free speech. It's great that Michael Crick can come on here and say, I don't like GBNews and rant about Donald Trump. That's exactly what we should be having. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with it, of course, but that also is exactly what we should be having. This isn't about Donald Trump. This isn't about Keir Starmer, but it is about the fact that in this country, we've still got a teacher in hiding because he, in some way, was seen to criticise Islam. And
that's totally wrong.
Sorry, say that again, Michael.
I said that's totally wrong. You're absolutely right on that point. But this is nothing like America. America, the decline of freedom in speech in America is utterly horrific. Utterly horrific. And you only had to see the way in which the White House press corps cowers before Trump. It's pathetic. Most of them aren't proper journalists. They're sycophants and they're propagandists.
Michael, first question for you. What do globalize the Intifada and to the river to the sea mean? What does that mean to you?
Well, those are both very complicated slogans and they can mean different things to different people.
Complicated.
But I wouldn't. I don't think in either case.
Those slogans?
I don't think in either, and I think the British government, if they are arresting people for saying either of those slogans, I think that is wrong, and I think it's wrong for the British government to have tried to have declared Palestine Action to be a terrorist group. I believe in freedom of speech on those things, what I don't like is the way in which academic freedom and press freedom have been threatened by your president. For another example, the way he's suing the BBC for $10 billion, a complete joke, and your network, CBS and ABC, have been terrorised.
It's nothing to do with freedom of speech. It's to do with the truth. And also,
yes, and the
on
BBC
your point
apologised,
about
there was no
how
damage.
You're assuming that this is chilling. Did
It
you
is
see
chilling
this interview segment the other day with Caitlin Collins on CNN?
There's no
Caitlin
damage
Collins of
in
CNN,
America
far
caused
from
by
Trump's
that program.
favorite journalist. She was
Nobody in
Saudi
America
Arabia,
watched that program.
and she actually talked about CNN.
Go on.
CNN nobody watches.
Okay, Michael,
nobody watched the BBC
Freedom of the Press
program.
Foundation.
Sorry?
Yeah, sorry, Michael. There's a bit of a delay, so it's difficult for the delay. Apologies. Adam Rose, the Deputy Director... Hang on the line, Michael, if you can. Adam Rose, the Deputy Director of Advocacy at Freedom of the Press Foundation, is still on the line. Adam, you were listening to... Oh, look at this. Really sexy six-box. Adam, you were listening to that conversation there. What's your take on what Michael was saying with regards to freedom of speech in the UK and the USA?
Well, I think he's exactly right about the USA, and as an American sitting here in America, I think it's atrocious the way that things are today. I would add that it was also bad at times under our last several presidents in this country. So this is not unique to Trump. However, Donald Trump has made things exponentially worse in many of the examples you already pointed out. I do think that there are fascinating differences between our countries. I actually worked on assignment in London for a while and was learning about issues with prior restraint, which is the ability of the courts to prevent journalists from publishing information that they have. Those are things we couldn't even imagine in this country, and it was actually very difficult at first for me to wrap my head around it. I understood it after a little bit of time, and that's not to say that one country is better or worse. We both have our problems. We both have our warts, and the goal of journalism, the job of journalism, is to expose those, to have that free speech. So whether it's a government official in the UK or whether it's a government official here in the US impinging these rights, we really need to speak out, and that's why I'm very glad this conversation is happening around those particular issues. Whether or not we agree on many of the political matters or any of the other concepts about how we should move forward as a society, without an informed public, we do not have the ability to function. And without a free press, we do not have an informed public. So I just wanted to say from this side of the pond, yes, I agree.
OK. Michael, look, my last point to you is, first of all, Victoria was making the point that on a recent trip to Saudi Arabia, Caroline Levitt, who is the White House press secretary, of course, Caitlin Collins from CNN was told by Saudi bodyguards that she wasn't allowed in a certain area. Caroline Levitt stepped in and said, no, Caitlin's coming with us, she's part of the press pool, she's CNN. So despite the administration absolutely hating CNN, Trump being pretty rude to Collins in the Oval Office the other week, saying he's never seen her smile, they are still open to bringing them in behind closed doors. And you'll ask every network here, Michael, they say this is the most transparent administration going. And just on the second point, Michael, on the universities, the free speech universities,
I very much doubt that. And
you can ask all the
Caroline
networks.
Levitt,
it's a by-point.
Did Mrs. Levitt give the Saudi regime a right rollicking over the murder of the Washington Post journalist whose body was carved up with a chainsaw? Did she?
Probably not, because they're doing deals with Saudi, so is the UK. I don't think,
So in other words, they'll turn a blind eye to that then. Turn a blind eye to that.
Yeah, it's a moot point. But my particular point on the universities, Michael, is you're talking about saying that free speech, globalise the intifada and so on. You're saying the consequences of that are serious. When you strip the visas of students here in America who are saying death to America, so on and so on, the consequences, you say, are severe for free speech. In the UK, Michael, the consequences of allowing that kind of Jew hate and anti-Semitism is 3 people knifed to death outside a synagogue in Manchester. The consequences... No, you hang on. The consequences are 2 people arrested minutes before they embark on what would have been one of the biggest atrocities against Jewish communities, children and kids. Thank God for our security services. The head of Manchester Police yesterday or the day before coming out and saying Jews are no longer safe in Great Britain. So that is the consequences, I argue, Michael, of letting that kind of behaviour go unaccounted for.
Well, it's a very complicated issue, but there is also a danger that you frighten people away from quite legitimate protests about the appalling rates of the appalling killing that has gone on in Gaza. 70,000 people, even the Israeli government now admits that. You frighten people against legitimate demonstrations and protests, and you smear their demonstrations, many of which actually include lots of Jewish people. You smear their demonstrations by describing them as anti-Semitic. That's the danger.
No, I absolutely support people to hold the Israeli government to account. I don't want to see any children dying unnecessarily. But when people they go into the streets, supporting the Islamist despots in Iran, calling for globalise the intifada, that's why you see what happened on Bondi Beach just a few months ago, or whenever it was, 2 or 3 months ago.
Well, the intifada, as you know, started off as a bit of stone throwing in the West Bank, and then it got worse and worse. And so you can interpret. I don't like the slogan. I would never use it, and I would caution people against using it. But I don't think it should be an arrestable offence. I believe. I mean,
Well,
you know,
it looks like
we believe in
slaughtering
freedom
people
of
on Bondi
speech.
Beach and slitting their throats outside Manchester synagogues.
Of course
I said, now
one
it looks
doesn't.
like
I don't
slaughtering
believe in
people
that.
on Bondi Beach.
Yeah, but that, to
Well,
say
not a conversation.
that a demonstration leads to murders is absurd. You've got to create the connection there, right? And there will always be extremists on both sides.
Connections there.
Just like there are extremists have been extremists in the Israeli army, and who have just murdered people in cold blood on video. We've seen that. Without proper due process and all of that. There are extremists on both sides, but these are not good reasons for the extreme curtailment of freedom of speech. So, in other words, we agree on this, but we agree in freedom of speech, but it's just what you count as freedom. Your freedom of speech isn't the same as my freedom of speech.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. Appreciate your company this morning. Stick around if you want to see our next segment. It's about pro-Palestine protesters going door to door in the UK. Take a look at this.
When you are Jew hunting,
we're saying that we
you
won't
are
go there
Jew
again.
hunting.
So I'll speak to the woman in that video who confronted what she calls people who are Jew hunting door to door. So they're pro-Palestine protesters going, knocking on people's doors in streets, asking if they'd boycott Israel. Fine. The more chilling element of it is they're making notes of people who say no. It's a shocking story. The woman in that video joins me next on The Late Show Live. Don't go anywhere.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GBNews, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dordme, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, a pro-Palestine campaign group in the UK has been doing the rounds in UK neighbourhoods, taking note of households who don't support their views. One woman in Sheffield caught them on camera, and this is shocking. Take a look at this.
I'm not doing anything of the sort that you are doing.
I'm only asking people to boycott Israeli goods.
Okay, so you're actually. What's your hat symbolise?
My hat symbolises a melon.
Watermelon.
A watermelon in support of the Palestine people.
Yeah.
I mean, look at
But you're knocking on doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Asking people to show their support for Palestine.
And if they don't,
We just go away and say
you go
sorry.
away. Do you take a
Thank you
note
very
of the
much.
door?
No. Well, we're taking note of doors that we've knocked on, but we don't put anything down.
I see. So
Just
you're
we don't
taking
do
a
it
note
again.
of doors you've
No.
knocked on.
Only so
and
that
the
we don't
ones
do
you
it
don't
again.
do it again, what kind of answers would they give that you don't knock on their door again?
Some of them say yes, some of them say no, some of them say I'll think about it.
And which doors don't you knock on? The Jews or the Jew supporting
We do
people?
knock on everybody's door.
Yeah, and the
whoever
ones
they
who,
are.
and you're telling me that there are some doors you don't knock on again. Which doors are they?
We don't knock on doors.
So you record the ones that give you an answer that is against your politics, is that right?
We record, we say no answer, or not interested, or supportive.
So you're not interested ones then?
Yeah.
You're making a note of those addresses?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. You are Jew hunting.
Well, we're saying that we
you
won't
are
go there
Jew
again.
hunting.
They're not Jews, most of them.
The writer and activist Jean Hatchett joins me now. Jean, first of all, was it you in that clip or were you just reposting it? And second of all, I first got news of this kind of operation going door to door on Friday when Sky News did a piece down in Brighton. There were concerns then from Brighton locals that, yeah, OK, fine, you want to go door to door and try and get people to boycott Israel, fine, that's one thing. But there were concerns from locals, as you pointed out, that they were making notes, these Palestine activists, of people who weren't interested. And from that clip, which you shared, that's been confirmed. They were making notes, chillingly, of people who said, I'm not boycotting Israel, I'm not interested.
Exactly that, yes. Yes, it was me asking the questions. Just two of us were there. You know, that's the issue, really. I asked the man and he told me. And I think that, you know, he said very clearly, we are finding people that do not agree with us, and then we take a note of their address. So, you know, it's very, very carefully hidden so that we don't knock again. But where does that information go? Where is it stored? What is it for? And who might it be passed to? That's the issue here. But also, what about the people whose doors they're knocking on? If those people are Jewish or supporters of Jewish people, or not supportive of the cause of these people, what happens, you know, and how do those people feel, the fear of saying what they think? That's not like passing a protest in the street. That's not like having a leaflet put through your door. That's someone right in front of you. You don't know what they're going to do if you say no. And it's you know, that's taking the terror of having an opposing view to these men right to their faces. And you know, that could be very frightening for some people. And as we saw, and as the other videos would show, they were very quick to violence when confronted, and especially by women. That really worries.
Well, let me remind viewers and listeners of how I first came across this on Friday. This is a piece from Sky News. Let's take a look.
They split into small groups and head off to nearby streets.
And we're trying to get people to get as many people as possible to sign up.
Oh, so I can't eat hummus?
Well, you can eat hummus, but just not Israeli hummus.
The group says its aim is to put economic pressure on Israel.
This is a local campaign in Brighton to boycott, divest and sanction against Israel because of the treatment of Palestinians.
So, Jean, that was in my neck of the woods in Brighton in East Sussex. You recorded your piece in Sheffield, correct me if I'm wrong. So this seems to be a nationwide campaign. It's organised.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where they'll go next, but you know, Sheffield's my city. I saw this was happening late last night, early this morning, and what do? Do you sit back and watch them go and terrorise a community and knock on doors and force people to either state their compliance with what these men are saying, or show opposition to it? And so we just said, no, we're going to go down, we're going to ask them what they're doing, we're going to ask them why they're collecting this information. There were only two of us, and you know, they were really, really horrible people who very quickly became violent.
Not to patronise you, Jean, because I'm sure you can look after yourself, but it must be very intimidating. Two ladies going down to confront random blokes in the street. I mean, how did you feel doing that?
Well, I was in Birmingham when I went to show the support for the Jews. When they were told not to be in the streets of Birmingham. So I've been in that situation before where we've been marched by police, very slowly for our own safety. So, yeah, frightened. However, what do you do? Do you sit at home and do nothing, or do you go down and say, actually, no, this is not okay, on behalf of the people who will be terrorised? And I'm not one for sitting at home. So, we did what we knew we had to do, and those men did what I expected them to do, which was react very, very badly to a very slight challenge.
Well, we've got one more clip to show you, Jean, and the viewers. This was comedian, former Little Britain star Matt Lucas, getting accosted by a Palestine protester on the Underground in London. Matt Lucas, by the way, just for clarity, he's Jewish. Let's take a look at this.
Free Palestine. Free Palestine, Matt Lucas. Free Palestine.
Hi, how are you?
I don't like this thing about Amir, do you?
Sorry?
You don't like what Amir?
No, I have no comment about it either way.
Palestinians. You've got a problem with Palestinians, man?
No. Please don't.
You can't do that. You can't grab my stuff.
So, Jean, I'm not sure if you saw our previous debate with Michael Crick, the journalist there, who was talking about, you didn't see it, basically President Trump is stripping visas from students in the US who are sort of, very vehemently anti-America, calling for globalised the Intifada and so on. Do you think that's warranted in light of what's happening to Jews all across the world? Bondi Beach, Manchester, the second Manchester plot that's been foiled, the fact that people are going door to door. Is the world unsafer now than it ever was before for Jews?
Obviously, I don't like to comment on US politics too much because I'm very, concerned about British politics. But, this should not be happening anywhere, that people are calling for the extermination of Jews. And that's what this is, whether you're knocking on a door or you're standing in the streets shouting, globalise the Intifada. The government of that country, whichever country it is, should be doing what they need to do to make Jewish people safe. No one that I know, no Jewish person that I know, is knocking on anybody's door and saying, do you agree with me? And if you don't, I'm going to keep a record of you. And then you don't know when I'm coming back. That's really what we're saying here, that when these records are being drawn up. So, the US will deal with that in the way they wish to deal with that. And I'm not going to comment or interfere or criticise that. Here, we need to be stronger because we have had people killed in the street. In Australia, they've had people, murdered on the beach. And this is what creates that environment. So whatever any government needs to do to stop that environment flourishing, to stop that kind of hatred flourishing, to stop whatever attack comes next, where the next people are dead in the street, they should do.
OK. Jean, thank you so much for staying up with us on The Late Show Live. Appreciate it. And I recognise it's fairly late in the day. So thank you so much. And hopefully we'll catch up soon. Thank you, Jean Hatchett. gbnews.com/your say. Let us know your thoughts. Stephen, you made me laugh with your comment. You said, I live in Sheffield. If they knocked on my door, they'd be volleyed down the garden path. Very good. Not condoning violence. Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
We need to call it for what it is.
Secretary
There is
Clinton.
a legitimate reason to have a debate about things like migration.
Well, here's a surprise. Even Hillary Clinton, who infamously called President Trump supporters deplorables, or a basket of deplorables, she now wants a conversation on immigration as well. Has the Overton window shifted dramatically on migration? We're discussing that after the break. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Right, Hillary Clinton, do you remember she called President Trump's supporters a basket of deplorables? Well, now it seems that she's had a change of mood about immigration, because she has basically come out and said that there now needs to be serious conversations about migration, saying it's gone too far, it's been disruptive and destabilising. Hillary Clinton, yes, her. This is what she said. Let's take a quick look.
Think we need to call it for what it is.
Secretary
There is a
Clinton.
legitimate reason to have a debate about things like migration. It went too far, it's been disruptive and destabilizing, and it needs to be fixed in a humane way with secure borders that don't torture and kill people.
Oh, nice of Hillary to finally keep up with most other common sense thinking people. It's reminded me actually of this really famous Bill Clinton State of the Union address, where it was in 1995, so a long time ago, but if this was made today by any politician, I can guarantee they would be calling him far right, a Nazi, a stormtrooper. This is Bill Clinton in 1995. Take a listen.
In the budget I will present to you, we will try to do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes, to better identify illegal aliens in the workplace as recommended by the commission headed by former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
Interesting, eh? Well, with me now is research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, Emma Schubert, who has today written a brilliant article in The Telegraph, headlined, "Labour is quietly letting the Boris wave become permanent." Emma, first of all, what do you make about Hillary kind of making that public switch in tone on migration? Is she just going with the times to kind of stay relevant still? And what do you mean by Labour is letting the Boris wave become permanent?
Well, first of all, as you say, I think it's big of her. I can't read her mind. I don't know why she's changing her tone so dramatically. Maybe because her position has become untenable, like a lot of the Democrats' positions on immigration. Now, in terms of the Boris wave, we're very worried in the UK about Keir Starmer possibly backing down on the proposed reforms that Labour proposed to the indefinite leave to remain system we have in the UK. Basically, it's looking like he might keep the status quo as is in order to keep his backbenchers happy, and that would be a fiscal disaster for this country.
Fiscal disaster just describe that. You mean the amount of people claiming benefits for decades to come, maybe social housing? Just to explain how would it manifest as a fiscal disaster?
Sure. So under the current rules, there are no tax contribution requirements in order to get indefinite leave to remain. And you're eligible for indefinite leave to remain after 5 years on most temporary visas. So because net migration in the UK hit over 2.5 million during the Boris wave between 2021 and 2024, we're expecting huge numbers of those people now to start qualifying for indefinite leave to remain starting this year. So between now and 2030, we expect to see around 1.6 million people get indefinite leave to remain. And the fiscal disaster part comes in because settlement or indefinite leave to remain comes with full state support plus family reunification rights, which in and of itself generates further migration flows. So it looks like this system over the course of these migrants' lives will cost the British taxpayer hundreds of billions of pounds.
Very good. I thought we were told, Emma, that migration's great and everybody, it's great for the economy, GDP's, the most important thing going. Well, the truth is, as we all know, GDP per capita has been contracting for decades despite migration going like that. I'm just going to bring in my panel here, Simon Hankinson and Victoria Churchill. Simon, you're a border and immigration expert. Two parties now, Reform UK and the newly formed 2 days ago, Restore Britain, say they will basically deport and scrap indefinite leave to remain under certain circumstances. Is that what needs to be done to reverse this wave of migration that's been thrust upon Britain?
Absolutely. I mean, Hillary Clinton is asking for something that's not possible. When they say humane, what they basically mean is you can't kick anybody out. If you have a system that has any integrity, at some point you do have to actually remove people, and it's not fun. But if you send the message out that you're not a soft touch and that people can't stay forever, eventually they stop coming in such large numbers. You've seen 12 million people, I think, arrive in Britain in the last 20 years. And at this point, at this rate, it is simply unsustainable in both fiscal costs and I would argue in social costs and in the loss of the British identity. So yeah, I think something serious has to be done. Starmer may back down on it, in which case he could take a drubbing.
Emma, quick question to you before I let Victoria come in. Some people, I'll just say that, some people are suggesting that to get really tough on immigration, we need to be looking at even British citizens who were born in Britain, maybe they have Indian or Bangladeshi parents, who, if they don't speak English, aren't a net contributor to society, to the economy, they should be deported as well. Some people call it re-migration. Is that a serious idea? Is that a serious policy? Or is it just confined to the extreme ends of X and social media?
Well, insofar as how serious it is, the proposed reforms by Labour do have a retrospective element in them. It doesn't necessarily apply to citizens, but it lengthens the amount of time, it doubles the amount of time actually that you have to stay in the country in order to get indefinite leave to remain, and it applies to everyone who came since 2021. So this is, the citizen part is just definitely stickier. I think it's as Hillary Clinton said, it's valid to have these debates. But there is definitely some sort of precedent now building for it.
Okay, interesting. Victoria, what's your take on Hillary and also your thoughts on that infamous Bill Clinton clip from '95?
Yeah, well, I was just looking up the number. Bill Clinton deported 12 million Americans under his, not Americans. Illegals, excuse me, not Americans.
12 million people. Over how many years? 2 terms?
Yeah, over 2 terms. And Obama, it was about 3 million. So Clinton, it was 1993 to 2001, and then Obama 09 to 2017. There was 3 million deportations. Of course, we've been talking a lot about Tom Homan in the last few weeks. Of course, he was kind of sent by Trump to clean up the mess in Minneapolis. He's somebody that was, career in the immigration field and was, of course, awarded a medal by Obama for his work.
Well, now they call him a Nazi.
Yeah, and so, it is really interesting how you can have one policy idea that doesn't change change, and then as the political parties shift and sway.
That's crazy. Clinton deported 12 million.
12 million, yeah.
I would dispute that figure. Yeah.
What do you think, Simon? Any ideas? Top of your head?
It wouldn't be anything like that high. Yeah. I mean, it would depend on how you count deported, but even if it counts people turned around at the border, there's absolutely no way. In my mind, I'd have to do my research, but that sounds way too high.
Well, the fact of the matter is, presidents before Trump have deported millions of people, and we didn't see the scale of process that we see towards Trump. So what does that say? Emma, thanks for your contributions tonight. Great article in the Telegraph. We'll catch up soon, hopefully. More coming up after the break. Big second hour in store. Don't go anywhere.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good morning. Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
The democracy of Great Britain is under serious threat, and people, just because they post opinions on social media, are arrested and they're attacked. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, should especially take certain steps on this topic and not make any compromises so that he can protect or please this part of the community.
Well, that was back in June, but now the man convicted of burning a Quran is set to be, and I can't believe I'm saying this, granted asylum in the United States as a refugee if he loses a landmark court case in Britain this week. Unbelievable. Also on the show tonight.
E.T. phone home.
That sounds like me in the morning when I'm waking up. That, of course, was the iconic moment from E.T. But it might be real, according to former US President Barack Obama, who says aliens exist. Although, has he seen them? I'll reveal all later on. And we've got live images of active Kilauea volcano, Hawaii's big island. I'm sure I butchered that. which is, wow, look at these pictures, which has been erupting on and off for nearly a year in some cases. Lava towers have soared as high as skyscrapers, and the volcano has generated such tall fountains in part because of magma, which holds gases that are released as it rises, has been travelling to the surface through narrow pipe-like vents. I love this kind of stuff. I love it. Mother Nature at its best. I'm Ben Leo, and this is The Late Show Live. Remember, no breaks this hour. Welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in Washington is my panel, US political reporter for the Daily Mail, Victoria Churchill, and the immigration and border expert, Simon Hankinson, and in London, who is set to erupt like a volcano, GB News contributor and superstar Paul Cox. Hello, Paul. Thank you for your company. Right, moving on to our main news this evening, and it's a big one. The Trump administration is in talks to accept a man who burnt a Quran as a refugee from Britain. Yes, you heard that right. He is going to be potentially coming from Britain to the US as a refugee. The State Department here in the United States, they're preparing to help Hamid Koskan flee the UK if he loses a blasphemy case this week. So the potential intervention is likely to escalate transatlantic tensions over free speech, which of course critics have claimed is being eroded under Sir Keir Starmer's government, although he does insist. We've had free speech in this country for a very long time, and we still do. Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Tory life peer Lord Toby Young joins me now from the Free Speech Union. Lord Toby, thank you for joining us. This is, as a Brit here in DC, Toby, pretty embarrassing actually for me and my fellow countrymen and women here that we could potentially now have maybe the first ever British refugee to America.
Yes, it would be extremely embarrassing, I think, particularly for Sir Keir Starmer, who is Mr. Human Rights after all. So for an asylum seeker who's come to the UK fleeing persecution in Turkey to be granted political asylum in America on human rights grounds because his human rights are endangered in Britain, I think would be hugely, hugely embarrassing for Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour government. But, Leo, I think it's only going to progress if Hamid Koskan loses his case on Tuesday. So the Free Speech Union and the National Secular Society are paying to defend Hamid on Tuesday. The story is that he was originally convicted for burning a copy of the Quran in protest outside the Turkish consulate in London. He was convicted of a religiously aggravated public order offence, and the Crown's case was, well, he caused public disorder because a Muslim fanatic who saw him burning the Quran outside the Turkish consulate attacked him with a knife. That was disorderly conduct, so therefore Hamid should be prosecuted for causing religiously aggravated disorder. Ridiculous charge. He was originally convicted, but that conviction was overturned on appeal. We thought that was the end of the matter, and he was now a free man. But the Crown Prosecution Service is appealing his acquittal, and that hearing is taking place in the Royal Courts of Justice on Tuesday. And if the court overturns his acquittal and upholds the conviction, that will effectively create a Muslim blasphemy law by the back door. It will send a message to Muslim fanatics up and down the country that if they want to enforce Islamic blasphemy codes, all they have to do is violently attack the blasphemer, and the blasphemer will then be charged with a religiously aggravated public order offence. It's a recipe for chaos. It'll be the death knell for free speech in Britain. It'll cause a huge rise in community tensions. Why should Islamic blasphemy codes be embedded in our criminal law, but not Christian blasphemy codes, which were scrapped 18 years ago? It's mad, but the CPS are determined to make the burning of the Quran by hook or by crook a criminal offence. And if that happens, if Hamid loses, then it looks like he'll be on his way to the United States.
I mean, the whole case is so chilling, and what's particularly disturbing, as you just mentioned, Toby, this gentleman came from, I think it was Turkey, to flee the Islamists. He was given refuge in the UK, and he has said tonight, if I lose this case and I have to seek refuge and asylum in the United States, Britain has fallen to Islamism. What are the chances? What do you think is going to happen at the? Is it the High Court? What do you think intuitively is going to happen? Is the CPS going to lose the case?
It's the Court of Appeal, and I imagine there'll be several judges considering this extremely carefully. The judge who overturned Hamit's conviction is a High Court judge, and his judgment was excellent. He essentially said that even though some people will clearly find the burning of a Quran deeply offensive, that's not a reason that it should be against the law. Free speech includes the right to offend people. It was a fantastic judgment, and as I say, we thought that was the end of the matter. But the CPS seems absolutely determined to try and make sure that anyone who burns a copy of the Quran and who is attacked as a consequence is prosecuted in future, which is why it will pose, I think, such a grave threat to free speech.
Last question, Toby, before I let you retire to bed. Thank you for staying up so late. Appreciate it. Do you think somebody would get nicked for burning a Bible in a town centre?
I think that's frankly inconceivable. I mean, remember the Crown's case here, the case of the Crown Prosecution Service is that because Hamit was attacked by a knife-wielding fanatic, his actions caused public disorder. Therefore, it was a religiously aggravated public order offence. And I can't imagine anyone burning the Bible being attacked by a Christian onlooker. It's essentially fanatical Muslims enforcing Islamic blasphemy codes by violently attacking people who breach them. And if the law effectively gives those people a stabber's veto, it will mean that from now on, everyone has to respect Islamic blasphemy codes, whether we are believers or not. Fingers crossed, Leo, that the Court of Appeal will see sense on this one and uphold Hamit's acquittal. I'm reasonably optimistic, but it's always hard to tell. Always a bit of a crapshoot when you go to the court.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive case. It's going to be stratospheric. Just finally, sorry, Toby, one more. What happened to the guy who attacked him with a knife? What happened to him?
So the guy who attacked him with a knife was charged with, I think, a fray. And got he got a suspended sentence. So he was effectively led off with a wrist slap.
Yeah, what a joke. Toby, thank you very much. You're doing God's work at the Free Speech Union. I'll implore our viewers and listeners to check you guys out and donate if you can. Lord Toby Young, thank you very much. Good evening to you. Right, gbnews.com/your say. Let us know your thoughts on that. Yeah, I mean, it's just, Dennis has said the CPS is obviously infiltrated and run by Islamists. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, that would be a story. But Simon, what's your take on this story?
Well, first of all, proud Free Speech Union member. I joined years ago when I saw this coming, and Toby's just a fantastic fighter for free speech in Britain. Yeah, it's terrifying. What we're looking at here is when a population in a given city reaches a critical mass of, and it's not all Muslims, but let's say the hardcore, fanatical ones who want to enforce speech codes and Sharia law or whatever, then, as he says, they have a stabber's veto. We've seen this in France, we've seen this in Germany, we've seen this in the UK. Salman Rushdie had to flee the UK because there was a fatwa on him, and he ended up getting stabbed, I think, in Vermont or New Hampshire in the middle of absolute nowhere.
Simon, one of the former Iranian government ministers who wrote a book supporting the fatwa on Rushdie, guess where he lives?
England.
North London. He lives in a council house in North London.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest. So this really terrifies me for the future. I don't like people burning religious books, don't get me wrong. And I think, Koskin might just be a little bit on the fringe side here with his beliefs, but he has a right to express them, and we simply cannot acknowledge this precedent and shut down even obnoxious free speech in civilized countries.
Paul, what's your take on this?
Well, for whatever reason, we seem to appease Muslims, Islamists in particular. We seem to have created this extra level of protected characteristic for these people. Batley grammar teacher, this guy that attacked the guy burning the Quran, getting off essentially. There's endless stories of how these people are protected. Now, I don't know why. It seems to be fear. Also, Islamists, last look at the statistics, committed in recent times the best part of 70% of the terrorist attacks in Great Britain. There is a reason to be fearful of some of these people. They have to get their house in order for us to trust them. And there is a massive trust issue here. Now, I agree with absolutely everything Simon said. We should have free speech. I don't want to see the Quran burnt. Obviously, I don't want to see the Bible burnt as a Christian. Now, if somebody did it, I wouldn't attack them with a knife. And I wouldn't feel like I was safe from persecution if I did. Toby, you're right. Toby is doing God's work. Toby wouldn't need to have started the Free Speech Nation if it wasn't probably for two groups of people: trans and Islamists. If you took those people and the people that vehemently protect those characteristics out of the picture, Toby would have about 6 members.
Yeah, no, Toby, he is doing some great work. Victoria, we've discussed this briefly. What would happen in the United States if somebody took to the streets and burnt a Quran?
I mean, that's within their purview, right? Same as flag burning, same as book burning. That is seen as a form of protected speech. Now, again, like everyone else has said, you know, I have a problem with people burning the Quran. I have a problem with people burning the Bible, the Torah. I think all religions, right? That's one of the freedoms of religion, is one of our First Amendment rights. But so is freedom of protest and demonstration. And so, you know, within those First Amendment rights, that's kind of where we see these tensions of, you know, is your freedom of protest more important than the freedom of religion? And, you know, that's where we get into these debates, whether that's on TV or whether that's in the courts. These are important conversations to have, but at the end of the day, both things are permissible. And, you know, I'm quite disgusted that the guy that attacked him with the knife is the one that got off scot-free, right? Well, that's assault. So, you know, that should also be persecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Let's talk about that guy. So he was done for affray, which, if you're not familiar, Americans, is the lowest form of assault. It's not even assault. It's basically getting in a bit of handbags. It's a scrap. He was let off for attacking somebody with a knife. Somebody on your say has said, now, Paul, David Lammy, his law, will allow youngsters to run around with knives, knowing they'll just be reprimanded. And it reminded me, when I went back home to the UK last week, whenever it was, my wife wants to become a magistrate. As part of the application process, you have to go to court and sit in on some cases at magistrates' court. I've spent my life in courts as a journalist reporting on cases, so I said, oh, come on, I'll come down with you and we'll sit in the gallery and you can watch some cases come to and fro. One lad stepped up, he was 19. He had already been caught with a knife as a 17-year-old. He was given a youth prevention order for carrying the knife. He had no good reason to carry it. He was pulled over. He had ketamine on him, cannabis, and a knife. His excuse for the knife was that he was gutting a hare later on. The magistrate said, normally, the starting point for possession of a knife in this circumstance would be 6 months imprisonment. The defence barrister got up and said, well, he's a really nice boy, he's from a great family, he's a sweetheart really, he's got ADHD and some autism, he had the knife because he was gutting a hare later on, he's getting some help for the ketamine and the cannabis. And the magistrate just sat there nodding and said, all right, that's fine, you can have a fine. He was walked free with just a fine. We need, Paul, call me authoritarian, zero tolerance, at least 5-year mandatory sentences for carrying a knife straight off.
Gutting a hare later on. Where did he live? 1874.
Yeah, there's a joke.
I mean, it's absolutely I mean, sorry, I haven't gutted any hares. But you're right, given the state of knife crime within the UK, we have to have zero tolerance. There was a balmy Scots politician that came out just today saying that if you carry a knife in Scotland, you should expect to get shot. Now, he's balmy because not many people are carrying guns, and we're not really advocating shooting people just because they've got a knife. They could be gutting a hare, for instance. But we do have a massive issue in this country, and that sends a message. I'm not saying that kid at 19 who's probably made a mistake should spend 10 years in prison. Now, I know some people would see that because it would be a huge deterrent, but there's got to be some sort of mandatory 6 months detention of some kind, because why else would people not do it? Now, we've got people carrying knives because they feel like they want to harm people, and then because people know that, they're carrying knives to protect themselves. We've got this whole industry of knife carrying going on, but no deterrent. And all we ever hear about is the murders that happen in schools. So we don't stop it.
OK, Paul, thanks very much. For your knowledge, the guy, the lad, the 19-year-old, he's from your neck of the woods. I think he was down near Pompey or Fareham or Havant or somewhere like that. So
that makes perfect sense, particularly if it was Havant.
Yeah. Yeah, Havant and Waterlooville. They had a great FA Cup run some years ago. I think they played Man United, maybe not. Well, they did, thank you, Paul. Right, let's move on. Another bit of breaking news here in America. In the latest developments in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, which of course is the mother of the cable network news anchor Savannah Guthrie, investigators tonight say a glove found 2 miles from her Tucson home in Arizona appears to match the one worn by the individual seen in this surveillance footage from Nancy's doorstep. Officials are now awaiting DNA results, which typically take around 24 hours to be processed, and once they have been processed, they can then compare them to the national database. So police have also begun aerial searches, and this is fascinating, over the Tucson desert in an effort to detect a signal from Nancy's pacemaker using a high-tech Bluetooth tracking device. With me now is criminal defence lawyer RJ Dreiling. Great to see you, Mr. Dreiling. The two bits of detail here, particularly the one about the pacemaker, getting a drone in the sky, looking for a signal from her pacemaker. I didn't know they could do that, but does this give a glimmer of hope that after 3 weeks of this mystery, we may get some answers soon?
Absolutely, it does. Look, this has been an exhaustive search involving hundreds of law enforcement officials. It's the most high-profile case in the country, and they're throwing everything they can at this situation. Obviously, look at the special technology to look for the Bluetooth from the pacemaker could yield some pretty significant results. You also mentioned the DNA earlier from the glove, found, I think, within 2 miles of the scene. It stands to reason if that glove is a match found in the 2 miles away from the scene with the gloves we saw in the surveillance video, the next thing the FBI and the local officials are going to do is go through every local store, every Walmart, every Home Depot, and try to see if anyone has purchased those gloves within the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to see if they can link the person who purchased those gloves to the person in that surveillance video.
Yeah, they've got a massive task on their hands, the authorities, the FBI, the police, the Sheriff's Department. I think they had something like 13,000 leads in the past couple of weeks or so, and they have to thoroughly investigate each and every one of those. With regards to the fingerprints found on the glove, or the DNA at least, just explain, please, what happens here in America? Is there a massive database of DNA of current, criminals or people they've got DNA from, which they can then compare it to?
That's exactly right. There's a database called CODIS. That's a national database full of DNA from essentially anyone who's ever been arrested in the United States, anyone tangentially involved in criminal cases. And what they'll do is they'll take the DNA from that glove found about 2 miles away from the scene. They'll analyze that DNA. They'll get the markers that they want, and they'll see if it results in a match from that CODIS database. Now, it may result in a match, and we may land on a suspect. What could also happen is it can match with a family member, like a parent, a mother, a father, a brother or sister, or even a cousin. So even if it isn't a direct match, sometimes what they can do is they can find someone related to the person they're looking for to kind of help them move the investigation along.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me, when I was about 18, it happened to me. The police came to my work. This is a story. They came to my work at my local newspaper. I was only a young lad, and they said a serious crime had happened down on the beach at some point, and maybe 1% of the DNA matched my half-brother's. So they had to DNA test him, my half-brother, and also, because I was his brother, DNA test me. Of course, neither of us knew anything about the crime, and they did eventually catch the guy. But it just showed the extent of DNA matching. You get anybody who's got a strand of any sort of resemblance of the DNA, their family members, and so on and so on. Mr. Dreiling, last question to you. Where do you see this case going? How long until we get some answers? And do you think it's going to be a positive conclusion?
That's the million-dollar question. It is exceptionally rare, given the technology you just mentioned, DNA, fingerprints, surveillance videos, all the technology available to law enforcement, for someone to truly get away with a bona fide kidnapping. There's been some reporting very recently that this might have been burglary go wrong. My anticipation is that with this new evidence, that will link them to someone who they think is the suspect, and then maybe once they get that, they can put the case together. So I expect we'll find out who it is, although it remains to be seen.
Okay, great stuff. Yeah, thoughts and prayers to the Guthrie family. I hope Nancy has returned. But I made the point last night, actually, that even if she is returned safe and well, she's an elderly lady. She's 84. I don't know how long she's got left, but what will the quality of her life be, having gone through this awful trauma, being kidnapped and taken from your family? I don't know. I dread to think. Thank you very much for your contributions, RJ Dryling, criminal defence lawyer. We'll catch up soon. GBNews.com/your say. Let us know your thoughts on that. Still ahead on the Late Show Live, we'll look at the front pages, including this whopper from The Sun. £500,000, £500,000 for small boat migrants who basically sued the government for taking their mobile phones off them, saying that they breached their human rights. They pocketed $6.5 grand each. I mean, Broughton, Bricken, eat your heart out. Let's take a very quick look at your weather. No breaks.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled start to the week. There are quite a number of blustery showers around, but it is turning cold overnight. But Tuesday is looking like a bright day to come. But for the time being, there are these showers that are drifting in this northwesterly wind through much of the day. Some of these showers could combine towards longer spells of rain through the afternoon. But in between these showers, there will be some brighter spells and some drier interludes at times, especially across the south and Northern Ireland and the western parts of Scotland, and still relatively mild for the time of year across the south, highs of around 9 or 10 degrees. Elsewhere, it's around what we would expect for the middle of February. Now, as we go through this evening, you'll see where we do have these breaks in this cloud, so it could be a pleasant end for quite a few people, but a lot of these showers could combine towards those longer spells through the evening. Northern Ireland is going to be relatively dry, just 1 or 2 showers here, but a lot of the showers up towards Scotland, especially on those higher hills, are turning to snow. We could even see them drift towards lower levels as we go through the overnight period, as well as that colder temperature does start to drift in from the north. But a lot of those showers out towards the south are drifting away, and we do have plenty of clear skies to come, which will allow those temperatures to fall away. We are expecting some frosty patches, even some icy stretches across Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland as well. And as you'll see, those temperatures are dipping below freezing first thing on Tuesday morning. But that will lead to a bright and sunny day for much of Tuesday. There are 1 or 2 showers just drifting down the northeastern coast here, and some wintry showers across the northern parts of Scotland. Even some hazy sunshine across the southwest, but otherwise a dry day to come, albeit a little bit colder than what we've seen over the last few days. Highs for Tuesday in that sunshine of around 6 or 7 degrees.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Arthur Dent on Your Say has said, Ben, why did the police have your DNA? They didn't have mine. They had my brother's for something very minor. But yeah, that was that. Right, let's move on. Barack Obama has shocked viewers by saying that he believes aliens are real during a podcast hosted by Brian Tyler Cohen. Aliens are real. This is the former US president. Take a look.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in what is it?
Area 51.
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
With me now is Communication and Media Studies Professor at St. Peter's University, Barna Donovan, nice to see you, Barna. First of all, I watched this interview in its sort of entirety, pretty much, and the interviewer, after Barack Obama says, aliens are real, I haven't seen them, there's nothing Area 51, he just moved on to another topic. He said something else. I'm thinking, come on, ask him more about it. Are aliens real, and why would Barack Obama be saying this now?
Right. Well, thank you so much for having me. And that is the fascinating thing about this interview, that the host just tosses the question out there, and then a former president says very matter-of-factly, I listen to his inflection, and he says that they're real. Not, I believe they're real, but they're real. Like, this is a statement of fact. And he says, well, I don't believe that they're in Area 51 and in underground chambers and things like that. And then they just move on. I mean, if I was the reporter, I'd say, oh my God, so this is a major piece.
How do you know they're real? I mean, it's a simple question. Yeah.
Sure. And
do you
again,
think they're real, Barna? Do you think they're real?
Do I personally think aliens are real? I do. The majority of scientists argue that life in space is definitely a possibility. So life out there is a possibility. Now, whether they came here, there are a lot of sightings. There are a lot of the reports where you can't easily explain them away. Usually, it's roughly about 10% of UFO sightings can't be explained. And I mean, some of them are so compelling that I become a big fan of Sherlock Holmes. And I say that once you eliminate the impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, is probably the answer. And you have a lot of impossible debunkings that you have Venus seen through cloud formations and swamp gas and balloons, and they can be eliminated, absolutely. So I'm very open-minded, and I believe there's life out there, and they might have been able to come here.
I think if I sat here and expressed my true thoughts on aliens and intergalactic, well, I call them interdimensional beings, I think I'd probably be cancelled for appearing to be a nutter or something. But I think they're here. I think there are far more advanced life forms than us in the universe. I think there are probably much less advanced life forms than us in the universe as well. And I think, if anyone cares, I think they're amongst us now. I think they can probably shapeshift and look like humans and so on. What do you tell your students? Do your students at university, Barna, do they believe in aliens? Do you ever bother asking them?
We have a mixed bag. We have a lot of people who don't think about it much. They just watch science fiction, but never concern themselves about whether or not aliens might be real. Others are open-minded. So I say, keep your mind open to extreme possibilities, but look for incontrovertible proof. And even if some sightings are unexplainable, you can keep your mind open, but be careful about jumping immediately to something very fantastic.
Okay, great stuff, Barna. Thanks very much. Stay safe. Hide from those flying saucers who want to abduct you, and we'll catch up soon. Thanks, Barna Donovan. gbnews.com/you'll say. Simon, do you believe in aliens? Not illegal aliens.
There's 100 billion galaxies in the known universe, 100 billion solar systems in each one, at least, 5 planets? I think the odds are there has to be life out there. Whether it's here is another thing.
Victoria, would you like to?
Yeah, again, we've talked about it. I actually thought about the fact that we've talked about this on the show over the last month.
Have we?
When this Obama clip came up, and I was like, I, for one time in my life, feel vindicated by Barack Obama, which, typically that doesn't happen. I typically disagree and don't believe a lot of the things he says, but on this one, I was surprised, pleasantly surprised. Dennis
the Menace on your say has said, surely alien crafts can be detected by the same systems that detect aircraft and missiles. No, I disagree. Paul Cox, if you told people 150 years ago, 100 years ago even, that we would one day fly to the moon in a space shuttle on the Apollo missions and so on, they'd say, absolutely not. We can't do it. The technology doesn't exist. They'd have no idea. So why cannot that same train of thought be applied now to future technologies that we aren't aware of as humans, i.e. aircraft that can bypass missile detection system, radar, and even travel, the speed of light?
To be fair, if you told some people that we'd travelled to the moon in 1969 tomorrow, they'd tell you that we didn't. But of course there are aliens. I've sat on enough panels with enough lefties to know there has to be aliens out there. I've spoken about aliens more to you and Victoria than I probably have any other human beings ever. Absolutely, there is aliens. Of course there is. There has to be. Simon gave you the statistical reason why there could be, and I agree entirely with that. We, of course, have technological systems which are well beyond our comprehension that exist now. In terms of military and warfare, and for very good reason, they're secrets. Now, in the future, I was only having this chat with my daughter yesterday. I talked about how social life was pre-internet, and it just blew her mind. She's 16. She has no idea, right? And I said to her, there will be something in 30, 40 years' time that you will be entirely reliant on that you do not know exists right now. Of course, the way technology is advancing, there will be things that we just can't comprehend.
That's my point. Yeah, that's my point. Glynis Spencer on your say. Hello, Glynis. Good morning, evening, afternoon to you. You said, Ben, I saw a UFO 20 years ago over the South Downs. It travelled west towards Portsmouth, Southampton. Glynis, I think that was just Paul on a night out, was it?
There's a good chance. There's a good chance. Do you know, a lot of people see UFOs over the South Downs because when you're on the South Downs, there's no light pollution. So all you can see is the stars at night. Now, if you ever lay somewhere, you don't have to lay there, you can sit there, do what you like. But if there's no light pollution, you will often see satellites fly past all the time. I've done it with friends and family before. There is a lot going on in the sky that you're completely unaware of. I believe people have seen UFOs. Of course they have.
Yeah, on the South Downs, when I'm in the UK, I live by the South Downs, and many a time I've gone up there midnight, 1 in the morning, laid down and seen the most beautiful meteor showers, just shooting stars streaming across the sky. As you said, no light pollution, so it's just perfect, it's beautiful. Right, let's move on to more serious matters. Front page of the Mirror tomorrow. The headline reads, "The Great British Water Shame." This is water firms being exposed over horrific sewage spills in a new TV drama. The pollution in our seas and rivers, for me, is just indicative. A nation literally swimming in its own filth is indicative of where we are in Britain at the moment. The Daily Mail. So what are the police waiting for? This is a story about investigation, calls for a more thorough police investigation on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over Epstein. The Express tomorrow. Switch on the lights to make our streets safer. This is a campaign to turn on street lights at night to protect women and girls at risk. Councils, of course, do it to save money. The Times, under 16 social media ban may happen this year. Keir Starmer tonight proposing to force VPNs, virtual private networks, which is basically, if you're not familiar, it's software that allows people to pretend they're connecting to the internet from a different country as opposed to Britain to bypass age laws. The Sun, this is a big one. £500,000 compensation for channel migrants who had their phones taken from them by the government on arrival into Britain. This is an outrage. So the Czechs apparently breached the human rights of these migrants, and they pocketed £6,500 each on average. I think it's disgusting. You come to this country seeking asylum. I mean, I argue most of them are fake asylum seekers anyway. But anyway, you come to the country seeking asylum and refuge, and one of the first things you do is sue the government and fleece taxpayers who are paying for you anyway because you had your phone taken from you for security purposes. I think it's vile. I think it's disgusting, despicable behaviour. The Metro. Yvette Cooper, truth is the antidote to Putin's poison. This is a follow-up on the revelations that Alexei Navalny was poisoned with an Ecuadorian dart frog. And the Independent, it's dark, it's cold, it's endless. No, they're not talking about Arsenal's title collapse. They're talking about world leaders.
They won today, didn't they?
Well, it was the FA Cup. Oh. World leaders wringing their hands over Ukraine. Paul, can we talk about the front page of The Sun? The
yes,
migrant story, and we'll get through the other papers in a sec. What's your thoughts on that? I think it's vile.
Well, it is. I mean, if we just take a step back, the optics are absolutely terrible. The idea that there are hundreds of thousands of mobile phones stole, sometimes by migrants, in this country, and nobody has ever compensated, let alone any actual justice enacted, then as a process of trying to identify an illegal immigrant, be giving that illegal immigrant £6,500 for the privilege is absolutely abhorrent. I mean, obviously the optics aside, the idea of putting this into practice is purely about human rights, and this is why there's an exploitation of the ECHR. We do not need to do this. Taking someone's phone because they have committed a crime to try and identify who they are should not require compensation. You or I, Ben, if our tweets were to be investigated, mainly me, then and I got into trouble and my phone was taken away, I wouldn't be compensated for that if I didn't commit a crime. I'd go through hell and back, and the process would be the punishment. So I'm sorry, there are so many reasons why this should not happen. I mean, above all else, we don't have the money. These people cost us billions of pounds a year. Chucking another, what was it, 500,000 quid? It's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. We don't need to do it. It's a misinterpretation of the ECHR, and we should stop it immediately.
Simon, the story reads, High Court judges ruled nabbing the phones and data was illegal and in breach of European human rights laws, as Paul just said. It's feared 1,300 migrants may apply for compensation and the sum could run into millions. So 500k is the current figure. It could run into millions. The Sun's revelations over the first payments equals $6,500 per migrant. Reform MP Robert Jenrick said it's a farce and a total waste of taxpayers' money.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, look, the Danes have started confiscating people's property when they arrive and not letting them sign on for benefits, and it's had incredible success in turning off the taps. This is insane. I mean, what's going to be next? They're going to be able to sue because the quality of their housing isn't good enough. They want an extra bedroom, big screen TV, a car to take them back and forth to the doctor. Hey, wait, they already have that one.
Yeah.
This is nuts.
No, it is nuts. Victoria, Dennis the Menace on your say said only someone like Keir Starmer could preside over the mental situation we have here. Lynn has said we need to track down all the judges that are doing this with compensation money and get rid of them. Let the judges be judges. And Joe has said a mobile phone is a privilege, not a human right. Case closed, surely. Well, the case is, Victoria, that they took their data. The government took the migrants' data. Who cares? What would Trump say about this?
I mean, he'd probably do the same. Obviously, there's big debates over how the U.S. government treats migrants in this country. They are suing for unsafe housing conditions. I'm sure multiple, I'm sure Simon can enlighten you more on that. I'm sure he follows that a little bit more closely than I do. But look, again, it is a privilege to come to a country that is not your own and try to make a life there. You have to comply with the laws that are in place, whether you like them or not. And, having higher scrutiny for who comes into a country, I think is perfectly normal. Yeah. You have a right to come, but, we, whether that's the US or the UK, have a right to scrutinize you. And, I'm all for data privacy, but, I think you have to know who's coming into your country. And I think especially if people lie, the one way to get that truth, whether they lie on an application, is to look at that data. Again, I'm for U.S. citizens, right? I was talking earlier about the Fourth Amendment, unnecessary search and seizure, but I don't think in this case, if this was the U.S., I don't think necessarily Fourth Amendment protections would apply. Yeah. Again, Simon might have a little bit more details on that, but at least my understanding is they wouldn't necessarily.
I just think beyond anything else, beyond the money and the headlines, how ungrateful of these people coming to Britain for a new life, courtesy of the taxpayer and the government and the generous, hospitable people of this country. How ungrateful to sue the government, one of the first things you do here, and fleece taxpayers, fleece British people in the process. I think it's disgusting. Right, Arthur Dent has said, Ben, angels and demons are interdimensional beings and are said to appear as something else in the Bible, e.g. shapeshifters. There's a lot of space, but also a lot of time. They are far too away to get here and may have already died out or not become able to do space travel yet. Arthur, meet me after the show for a couple of whiskies. We'll get stuck into that. I'll be with you for hours. We've got some breaking news, though. Savannah Guthrie has just released a fresh plea to her mother's kidnappers. Let's take a look at that clip.
I wanted to come on and
It's been 2 weeks since our mom was taken, and I just wanted to come on and say that we still have hope, and we still believe. And I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here. And we believe. And we believe in the essential goodness of every human being. And it's never too late.
That video has just dropped. It's the daughter of Nancy Guthrie, the US TV anchor, the news anchor Savannah, releasing a fresh plea for the release of her mother, saying she still has hope. It's been 3 long weeks, and I can't imagine the pain and the questions that are running through her and her siblings' heads right now. Simon, what's your take on this story? It is a growing mystery, which is proving, I think it's fair to say, challenging for the authorities. It's been 3 weeks, 13,000 leads. They've investigated some high-profile ones which have been reported. They've turned out to be nothing. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know why it is that we have a case like this every so often. You know, there's the Lindbergh baby in the 30s, and there's Elizabeth Smart, I think, out in California, was it? It's just awful. There's a special place in hell for someone who would kidnap an 80-something-year-old woman. The motive is just inconceivable. And I can see why people, you know, everybody can somehow relate to this situation, to Savannah Guthrie. And yeah, I just hope they find who did it, and they find her, and that she's alive and well.
Victoria, I mean, I know nothing about law enforcement investigations or crime investigations. You know, I'm just a normal person, but I would suggest or assume that this case is now so high profile. Everybody's talking about it. Even British news channels are talking about it. I don't know. If I was a kidnapper, I would be panicking and maybe do something that the family wouldn't like.
Well, I would say if I was a kidnapper, I'd feel emboldened by how high profile this case has become. You know, I would say if I had demands, I would keep upping and upping and upping the stakes, because everybody, you know, I would assume if you're a normal person, you want to see this woman return safely to her family and her children. And so I would really, I think if I was the kidnapper, I would lean into that and, you know, get as much as I can out of the poor family that just wants their family member back.
I suppose I can never get in the mind of a kidnapper, and it's just pure evil. Paul Cox, what's your take back in Blighty on this case? Apart from GB News, have you seen much reporting of it?
I have only seen reporting of this on GB News, and that's astonishing, really, isn't it? I think it's gathering pace now. To be fair, right, I should be upfront here. I don't really watch any other news channels. So, and I get, this is my job. I work for this station. I love this station, and I watch it when I'm not on air. So I don't know too much about whether it's on the BBC or not. But I am across X, and I do have the apps to look at BBC News, etc. I've only seen it on this. This is an astonishing story. I know this sort of thing happens a lot, but it feels like a real American story as well, and you have to start to feel incredibly concerned that this elderly lady is not coming back. This is a long time for her to be without her medication. This is a long time to be without the people who really care for her. This guy on the CCTV footage, or the ring bell footage, I should say, he looks incredibly amateurish. Now, he went and got some shrubbery after this and sort of placed it over. He's obviously got some gloves on there, but he didn't look as if he knew what he was doing particularly well. But it's astonishing in this day and age that you can just disappear like that. She's disappeared, he's disappeared. He seemed to be local. He seemed to he came on foot by the looks of it. I don't know if there's been any further update on that, but he seemed to come on foot. The only way you could approach this property on foot is if you knew where it was, because it's not like a residential street in London. This is a bit out in the sticks, and Arizona's a big place. So it would seem to me that this is incredibly worrying now. If you take all the emotion out of it, it's quite the story. It's headline grabbing. This is a major anchor on American breakfast TV, and her mother has been kidnapped. There's a reason that they've chosen her mother, and it's likely to be because of her, Ben.
Yeah, it could be, I'm sure it will be, some sort of Netflix series. You know, true crime is going through the roof in the UK and the US, well, all around the world, true crime stories. I really hope she's returned safe and well, but I just fear the state of mind for somebody to do this kind of thing. I just fear if they're happy to do this, they're probably happy to do something even more chilling as well. Right, let's have a very quick look at this incident from the Jeremy Vine show, where a chap called Henry Bonsu was presenting, and somebody called up to the show and had a conversation about how they felt unsafe in London, and he gave a very valid reason for feeling unsafe in London, and the response from the presenter covering for Jeremy Vine has absolutely infuriated the internet. Take a look.
The idea that you're going to be at greater risk in Tower Hamlets because there's lots of Muslims there than you might be, let's say you go into a bar in Bury St Edmunds full of, you know, guys who may not necessarily be used to looking to seeing someone like you. Are you really saying you'd be at less of a risk there than you would be in Tower Hamlets? On what basis?
Well, I've been stabbed twice in London. That's the basis. There you go.
It's a big city. Sadly, that happens sometimes.
I've been stabbed twice in London. Well, yeah, it's a big city. That kind of thing happens, Simon. I mean, is that, as Sadiq Khan would say, part and parcel of living in a big city, getting shanked twice?
You know, I lived in London 30 years ago, and knife crime wasn't a thing. No one ever said those words.
How long ago, sorry?
30 years. I left in...
Where did you live? Which part?
I lived in Islington.
Nice.
And Tooting, and I lived all over London, yeah.
So knife crime wasn't
it wasn't a thing. Nobody ever talked about it. I mean, there were stabbings just weren't a thing. I'm not saying they never happened.
Yeah.
It just wasn't something that you would ever think would happen. Nobody I knew had ever experienced a stabbing, and now people talk about it as if it's a commonplace occurrence. I think the rapes have gone up, what, 8 times, 10 times since I left? So, yeah, street crime has become much more of a thing in London than it was, at least in my youth.
I mean, Victoria, just to shrug off a comment saying, well, why do you feel unsafe? Well, actually, mate, I've stabbed twice. And he's like, well, it's London. I mean, what does that say about the state of affairs?
I mean, again, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You just become so desensitized to some of these things that should be shocking. And, you know, I think especially those of us that work in news, we see... You know, I think a lot of the times, of course, we see the best of people, but a lot of the times we see the worst of people, right? Because that's what news is. A lot of the times people want to be in these loops of information, which typically, unfortunately, tend to be negative. And so, again, I think as a news presenter, I can understand why he felt that way, but I also do think that his mannerism, you know, I guess, for lack of a better term, his bedside manner could have been a little bit better.
Yeah, not very sympathetic, was he? Right, Victoria, tell us, please, before we say goodnight, about this MAGA party. Right, let me tell viewers. Conservative influencer CJ Pearson, he hosted a Valentine's party yesterday in Washington, D.C. with a solely Republican crowd, so conservative crowd. The party was held here in Washington. It was intended to bring conservative Americans together in the nation's capital to offer an escape from the predominantly liberal dating scene. And let me tell you, Washington, D.C. is called the swamp for a reason. There are liberals, Democrats everywhere. My little neck of the woods is a conservative, and I didn't know this, it was just coincidence, which is great, but little conservative stronghold, which is good. Lots of Republican staffers. But the party came after the Washington Post slammed Republican dating in D.C., which likened dating a conservative to trying to date Frankenstein's monster. Just tell us about this party, Victoria. What happened? Was it at the party? And also, should politics come into dating and relationships?
Well, I think that politics definitely does come into dating and relationships, especially in this day and age. You know, a lot of women will opt out of looking at men who even identify as moderate on dating apps. Me, myself, I've known my husband for about 10 years. I've been married almost 4 years. Actually, our anniversary is this week, so that's pretty exciting. But, you know, I feel like I caught kind of the last chopper out of Nam because I met my husband in person and also here in D.C., and we both met working around Capitol Hill. But, you know, I think most of my friends, I'd actually say a large percentage of my friends aren't married or aren't seriously dating, and you know, I hear their struggles, and I feel like, you know, because a lot of the times I feel like in this day and age, politics relates to your values, right? And so, whether that's, even being religious, for example, that even tends to be a differentiating factor of left versus right.
Yeah.
And so CJ, he's become known for these parties. He's done a couple of them. He did one after the inauguration. He did one for July 4th. I went to his Halloween party.
Just for conservatives.
Yeah, and so he basically pre-vets these lists. People submit their social media. And so, there was, I guess, some matchmaking going on. I wasn't at this one because I was happily home celebrating Valentine's Day with my husband. We were eating tacos on the couch. But a couple of my colleagues went and covered this party. It seemed like a good time. I'm not quite sure how many people ended up with dates at the end of the night, or we'll be getting further dates. But, I think you really do have to, especially in a city like this, kind of have that pre-vetting, honestly. I think the other side of it that you look at is traditionally, a lot of this vetting, I think, was done innately through social circles. Talking about earlier before, I believe it was Paul, was talking with his daughter, there's going to be technology that you don't even know exists yet, and imagining your life without it. Dating is really one of those things where technology has impacted it so much. And, as me, as somebody that met my spouse in person, I'm definitely in the minority in that.
What is DC like? Just tell us, tell viewers at home in Britain what DC is like, really, when it comes to the demographic of the politics of the people.
95% Democrat voters, 5%. If you put out a Kamala Harris sign on your lawn in my neighborhood, it'll be there the next day. If you put up a Donald Trump sign on your lawn, it'll be gone before you get home.
You know where I live. Don't say on air, but you know the area where I live, and it is a Republican stronghold, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of staffers. I mean, half of Congress is Republican, and they all have, 30, 40, 50 staffers. So, and there's lobbyists and so on. They're not extinct, but those people don't, they're not from here. They come in and work a couple years and leave. Yeah. But every year it's like 95% town votes Democrat. So yeah, must be pretty hard.
Yeah. My gym is quite liberal as well. They've got diversity managers. They have the pictures of all pictures on the wall of all the personal trainers and so on. It's got their preferred pronouns and things, and there's flags up. And I'm just like, okay, just ignore it. Just keep on working out. Just ignore it. Paul, do you think politics should come into relationships?
It probably shouldn't, but it does. It's inevitable, isn't it? Can you imagine? Imagine right now if I was to meet someone who was a staunch Green Party voter and thought Zach Polanski made sex. Made sex? Made sense. Oh my God. I mean, what an image.
Well,
what an image.
We're finishing the show there, Paul. So let's just pack up and go home. We're done. We're finished.
Unbelievable.
I'm joking. Carry on.
Look, I think it probably does. You need to be compatible on all fronts. It doesn't mean you have to support exactly the same politics, but you have to be tolerant. That's what it means.
Yeah, indeed. OK, one more very quick story. I don't think we've got time to discuss it, but I'll tell you about it anyway. President Trump has vowed to put voter ID requirements in place before the midterms, whether approved by Congress or not. So the Save America Act is designed to prevent non-Americans voting in elections. Sounds like sensible policy, right? It passed the House on Wednesday, but it's still waiting approval in the Senate. However, the president has said, regardless, voter ID requirements would be implemented for the midterms, even if the bill fails, potentially using an executive order. However, it may already be too late for the president, as Texans have begun submitting early votes. Paul, voter ID? I mean, you need ID for everything else. Why not to vote?
Well, this could be completely inaccurate, but didn't Kamala Harris only win in states where there wasn't any voter ID? And if so, then absolutely yes, because I'm not suggesting that everybody who voted for Kamala Harris did so illegally, but it would seem that in the states where there was voter ID, they voted for Donald Trump.
Victoria, this is your story. You've got 10 seconds. Why wouldn't you want voter ID?
Well, I don't understand why. I saw a post from a liberal, or actually from a conservative, criticizing a liberal in the House, where to vote against voter ID, they had to put their ID card into vote.
Got it. Thank you very much for tonight, Simon, Victoria and Paul. Sweet dreams, Paul, about Zach Polanski, and viewers at home. I'll see you tomorrow for midnight. Sweet dreams. Good night.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be an unsettled start to the week. There are quite a number of blustery showers around, but it is turning cold